week 2 of Novel Bootcamp. This class is going to look at premise, loglines, and we're going to examine query letters. Not that you have to actually write a query letter right off the bat, but I thought that studying them might just be a good way to kind of visualize the entire story of a book and to start thinking in terms of how would you express what this story is about in a much more concise and truncated way. So thank you all for coming to this. We would hope that you've come to the first couple classes and have already signed up for your unlimited membership. But if you've not already done so, I would just do that now. If you can, if you want to continue with Scriptcamp, then unlimited membership will give you access to all of our different workshops and boot camps and events and classes. So you can get access to all of our classes on Scriptcamp as well, which is focused on screenwriting. By becoming an unlimited member, you get a 2-week free trial with that at scriptcamp.net/membership. And you can also get yearly for about 40% off if you buy the yearly subscription. If you haven't enrolled yet, scriptcamp.net/classes to buy the class, or start your trial, scriptcamp.net/membership. Okay, so what's new? We have these new boot camps for screenwriting starting soon, a new feature boot camp. It's like How to Write a Movie 101 starts Friday, October 7th. That's 1 week from yesterday. We have a new pilot boot camp that starts October 16th, and both of those are going to run until the end of the year. So that's our last feature, and wait, is it? No, wait, maybe we have one more after that. I think we may have time for one more. But we're getting close to the end of the year, so it's probably just going to be this last one or two more of our feature and TV pilot boot camps, which are very popular classes that will take you from idea to finished draft in just 6 weeks for pilot and 8 weeks for feature. We have Novel Bootcamp. This is going to the end of the year, so hopefully you've been following along and doing these early steps, and you've been reading, and you're ready to talk about things that you've read, and you are taking notes and trying to start to shape your story, figuring out what is this world, who are these characters, what is the direction of the plot, and all these things that we're going to start thinking about more today. And today we will also cover some prose stuff that I was not quite able to get to last week, like what makes a good simile and metaphor and things like this. So we have many other groups that you can see over here on the right side of your screen. We have table reads Sundays 2 to 5. It's tomorrow. Tomorrow we also have I think it's the second to last of our feature class. So this is week 7 of feature from 11 to 1. And then see workshops tomorrow at 5 o'clock from 5 to 7. You can come talk about what you're reading and writing and working on in the fantasy genre, either books or scripts. And we have a script swap coming up Tuesday at 5 if you want to trade with someone to get and provide feedback. Okay, so let's look at the schedule. We have plenty to do in this course, so I hope that we get these nice big groups that we had in our early couple classes. I hope that if you're watching along with the videos, you make sure to attend live to get that nice one-on-one feedback and interaction. But what did we start with? Intro 2 weeks ago, that was just an overview of how to write the book in 12 weeks. Week 1 was on prose and a little bit of premise. I think we're going to shift most of that premise discussion to today, because we just went into the basics of prose, POV, and tense. Is your book, first person, third person? How are you going to split up those viewpoints? We can talk a little more about viewpoints today as well. Next week we'll be on designing that cast of characters and making that character list, with the intention of over these next few weeks and continuing to build out the world of your story, especially if you have a significant amount of world building to do. You got to start on this kind of stuff very early on to make sure that you are thinking everything through to the extent that it needs to be. We have coming up, outlining starts week 5. So on week 5, we're going to start those scene cards. You're going to write a full paragraph for every scene in the book. Week 6 will be your second week of scene cards, so you get 2 full weeks for just figuring out the plot and doing plotting stuff, weeks 5 and 6. And then the rest of the course is basically writing, and you're going to be writing 2,000 words a day, more or less, a little less if you're writing a shorter book, a little longer if you're writing more if you're writing a longer one. But we're going to be going weeks 7 through 12. We'll be writing 10,000 to 15,000 words a week, and each class meeting will be focusing on that section of the book that you are currently on, starting with beginnings and just moving through first act, second act, third act, all the way up to the finale and the epilogue at the end. All right, that's what we are doing in this class. Hopefully you guys are excited and have been reading and writing and just gathering things for your sort of mental whatever toolbox or whatever you want to call it. So if you have not already done the paragraph assignment, you can post your paragraph either into chat or into the Google Doc that we used last week. I can I thought I had a link for that, but I can dig. I will get the link for that if you guys have more paragraphs that you have not already shared that you wanted feedback on. Maybe just let me know if you have one that you'd like to post in a Google Doc anonymously to get feedback rather than just publicly doing so. But if you have one that you don't mind just hearing feedback on, post that in the assignments channel on the Novel Bootcamp chats. Hi, welcome. Thanks for joining, Alien Boy. So as of week 2, this will be a good time to choose a real name to use in class. So you can choose a nickname, middle name, whatever you want for yourself by right-clicking on your avatar and clicking Change Nickname. So our overview today, we will look at paragraphs. If you guys have more paragraphs that you want to share, you can tell us about things that you've read and things that you've noticed or learned or been realizing in these books that you've been studying. We'll recap parts of speech, paragraphs and central ideas, tense and POV. And then we will look at simile and metaphor, when to use them, what makes a good one, all these things. We'll look at query letters and how to study query letters just for plotting information and how to... Oh, I think we're hearing some, like, wind sound from somebody's microphone. If you wouldn't mind just making sure that your mic is muted, click that small gray microphone icon in the bottom left corner of Discord's main screen. Thank you. All right, what else? Yeah, we'll look at queries and how to study queries for plot information and how to start conceiving of your entire story from the bird's eye view. We'll look at loglines and maybe can offer some critique if you guys have working versions of the loglines of loglines for these current book projects. And the goal will be to try to write a first version of a logline for your book by the end of class today and finalizing it this week. So over the next 2 days, try to get that final logline locked down. We should be making decisions now. If you have multiple premises that you're choosing between, you're starting to funnel down and make those choices. You have to start to define things. We have to start to say, this is what the book is going to be. There's many things that it could be, but this is what the book is going to be. And then we will do some paragraph exercises towards the end. Okay, so let's start with, remember that sketchbook. So if you have not already started your sketchbook, or have not already been working on your sketchbook, go ahead and make that now, and you should be adding to that all throughout class and constantly using that to draw from for, ideas for questions that you might have or things that you're struggling with, or just, it is useful to continue to have that open and be working on that all throughout. So here's a recap or review of the process: logline, sketchbook, story beats, scene cards, then we go to pages. This is not really a novel term mostly, this just comes from my screenwriting background, but go to pages meaning we will actually start writing the scenes from the book. But we have to start with logline, which is going to be that one sentence expression of the premise of your book. So we'll get to that today, and we will recap a couple of the things that we talked about last week. But let's start with, what did you read? What have you been reading? What did you like, notice, and learn? Feel free, anyone, to chime in. Tell us what you have been reading for the class, and what have you noticed? What do you want to share?
So this is what we're reading right now, what we're doing right now?
Yeah, that's right.
I'm a slow reader, so I'm still reading Frog Kisser, and I'm really enjoying it. And I wish I wish I had found this author sooner. It's simple. It's very accessible, and it's something to aim for, I feel like.
Yeah, Garth Nix is great. He writes middle grade, YA, and adult.
Yeah, and this, it's just, there's a little bit of, I really relate with the style, and like Harry Potter and Golden Compass are a little, like Golden Compass especially, that, verges on literary in some places, and it's just, that's not quite my speed, and it's a little older. And Harry Potter is just, I don't know what, she has some magic in the way she writes that just like makes it so interesting. And this one, it's really good, but it's not like, it's simple. There's something simple about it that is allowing me to learn from it in ways where I'm like, oh wait, I could write a sentence like that, or I have a character like that. It feels, I feel like I definitely have the fantasy brain, and I have for a long time, and I thought I made up some of these characters, and I'm like, oh, everybody that writes fantasy writes about these characters, or came up with the same, or like I didn't do this, but like say you crossed an elf with a fairy, you know,
Mhm.
and you're like, oh, everybody that's been in fantasy for any length of time seriously has, you know, crossed those two, or, you know,
Right,
things
right.
like that, which at first you're like, oh, I'm not original, but then you're like, wait, no, that means I'm thinking like someone who does this stuff.
For
So
sure.
it's actually a good line.
Mhm.
You could think of it like, if you see somebody famous who's published something that's along the lines of what you're writing, you can think great minds think alike, rather than, oh shoot, they already did it, because you're going to
Yeah.
always create your own twist on it.
Yeah, it's not that there's no room for you just because someone's playing the same game, or is using the
Right.
same tools.
Character. Yeah, yeah. And yeah, I like the um yeah, I'm really enjoying it. It's one of my favorites. So I yeah, I would have loved to have read it when I was younger. I mean, I think I would have enjoyed it even more. So, and then I'm also reading Sin and Syntax,
Mhm.
although I feel like I got through the most important parts already. I'm about halfway through, so I'm going back, alternating between those, which is another reason why it's taking me a while.
I see.
So yeah, that's where I'm at. Were you also asking where we are with our notebooks or our sketch pads?
You can update us on that if you want. Sure, go ahead.
Just, yeah, I've been doing research and having like ideas for scenes and characters. This is one of the first times that I have a beginning and an end and a character arc that's relatively clear to me.
Great.
And like, when all those classes that I took from Nacho are paying off as well, like the intro, the basic Wednesday, Thursday topics,
Mhm.
where or maybe, and this might have also come up in the TV class, but where you're like, everything that happens to the character is either moving them towards or away from their goal,
Right.
right? So there's that physical goal, but then there's also the emotional goal, right? The character change that happens internally, and everything needs to kind of propel them towards or away from that. And I don't think I've been as clear on what the emotional change was going to be. And I think part of it is because it's middle grade. You know, you can get away with being a little bit cheesier. I know that
Mhm.
sounds, but you know, a little, you don't have to be quite as subtle. And so
Yeah,
it's
that's true.
just like, oh, I can kids are just easier to suspend disbelief. And so yeah, and then I've been doing research on underworld magical creatures, and I found some, you know, there's Greek, not so naiads are the water deities, the
Mhm.
water nymphs. There's all kinds of nymphs. Tree nymphs are dryads, and naiads are water nymphs. And then there's actually underground water nymphs called lampades, and they bear torches. They're torch bearers. So I was going to have her have a torch underground anyways, because otherwise she's not going to be able to see. But I
Mhm.
thought, I don't necessarily need to have those characters in there, but there's a metaphor, like I can weave in a little bit of that metaphor about um uh you know, just if I run out of an idea, go look up a Greek myth, like there's something I can like pull from.
Sure.
So that's kind of fun. And yeah, so I'm excited to work more on fleshing out the premise um and outlining. So that's where I'm at right now.
Awesome. Great. Thank you so much. Yeah, good to flip back and forth between a nonfiction or style related book and actually reading something that can be useful to study both at once. Thanks, Amanda. Who else? What did you read? What did you like and notice and learn? You can give us an update on your own book if you want.
Can you hear me okay?
I hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, perfect. I've been doing actually, this week I was trying, I'm trying to do adaptations. So I was actually doing a Shakespeare adaptation. So I was doing Antony and Cleopatra. And I'm doing that one because I'm really interested in in plot. I feel like I have a lot of plot problems. So I'm like, let me go to the master, and I'm doing it. I'm trying to do an adaptation. It's like Shakespeare and dragons. So I'm just adding dragons to Antony and Cleopatra. And it's
Just
actually
add
been
dragons.
really, yeah, literally like just add dragons. You know, it's been so much fun. you
That's
know, because
cool.
there's a lot of what's nice is there's a lot, you know, it's Shakespeare, so you know, I feel like it's like trying to sing Mariah Carey or something. You're not going to sing it as well, so just have fun with it, you know.
Sure.
And there's a lot of like I found there's like I'm using a translation. It's called No Fear Shakespeare, so it's actually pretty cool, you know, like doing the translation, and also I'm watching I think from like '76, the Royal Shakespeare Company. There's a like online. There's a video of it, and like what's his name? Who was Captain Picard?
Patrick Stewart.
Patrick Stewart. What's that? I'm sorry.
Patrick Stewart. You're right.
Yeah, Patrick Stewart is in it. You know, it's just really great. I'm loving it. I'm loving, you know, what I'm really loving is like the characters, and I feel like like I love Cleopatra's character, and she's just over the top, you know, and I feel like I love characters like that. Another favorite character of mine is from a classic is Mrs. Bennet from Pride and Prejudice, you know, and they're just really over the top, you know. So I find it's really nice, and the Patrick Stewart character is really, you know, funny and cutting and all that stuff. So I find it really nice to be doing the adaptation and kind of like having the freedom to do it, and then I'm having like characters that big. And then I've switched a little bit. I have like a Princess Cleopatra and a Queen Cleopatra. Anyway, it's a lot of fun, and I'm learning a lot. Really from like what gets set up, how it pays off, and Agnaros. You know, really, and it's fun writing a tragedy because usually you don't write a tragedy. So anyway, that's what I've been reading and having fun with. Really, the past couple of weeks.
Cool. And wait, so that's your novel project? You're writing a sort of retelling of that Shakespeare show with like a fantastical angle on it? Is that what you're working on for the course?
No. For the course, I'm working on something that I've already been working on. This is something another project I'm doing. You guys know Kindle Vella?
Sorry, say it again.
I don't know if anyone. Kindle Vella. It's for indie publishing.
Kindle Vella. No,
so basically, it's an. Oh yeah, it's really nice actually. I'm doing it as part of my other writing group. We're all playing with indie publishing, and basically Kindle Vella is something where you can really just publish every day, chapter by chapter. It's for publishing serials, but not everyone knows what a serial is, so you can really just publish chapter by chapter. But I'm doing that for the adaptation, so I'm just going to do a scene by scene posting. That should be, there's 42 scenes, I think, and so that should be done prior to this one. But no, that's not what I'm working on for this one.
Okay, yeah, that could be a book though. That could be, you know, a fantasy. It would just be an interesting take, almost along the lines of what is it, Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, right? The sort of like Shakespeare retellings, but with fantastical stuff in them. Could be fun.
Yeah. I was also doing another one, Pride and Prejudice Dragons. I like the classics and just whatever is the market is reading now, and you want to have fun with. You know, I like and just have fun with it.
Sure. Yeah, that's a great way to just sharpen your skills and get better. And even if it doesn't turn out great, at least you had a good time.
Yeah, and what's nice, last thing I'll say about it, is you get feedback. Like, I've done this indie publishing under pen names, and it's great to get the feedback. And, like, I have feedback in Goodreads, you know, and you can... I like having feedback from the actual audience. And, like, I know I have to edit a lot of the stuff, but I love knowing which characters people liked. You know, you can get they'll highlight stuff in the book, so it's really nice. It's a wonderful experience as a writer, I find, to just put it out there, and you can publish, and you can put it under a pen name, so on and so on.
For sure. Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much for the update, Marcus.
Yep.
And who else? Anyone else? Let's check and see who's in the chat.
Elevation.
Go ahead.
By Stephen King. And it's basically, I mean, it felt like I just read a previous book, Fairy Tale, which for me had some issues with kind of the fantasy world. This book, Elevation, is about a guy who starts getting lighter and lighter. And what would you do if you were lighter, but he loses weight, but his body stays the same, so he looks kind of out of shape, and he is he's just finding that muscles are able to propel him. So he, you know, enters a marathon, and you know, of course, he can run really fast because he has no weight, but gets light. You know, like it's accelerating to a point where eventually, you know, he's going to be on the ceiling, right? So it's going to be like
wait,
zero.
this is not Thinner, the book, this other Stephen King book about the guy that gets cursed to lose weight.
Right.
This is a different Stephen King book.
It's very similar. I haven't read Thinner, but I mean, I know the story. But this is
Thinner.
Weight,
the Stephen King one.
Yeah.
Not thinness.
Oh.
Just being like anti-gravity. Basically.
He's losing mass, I guess you're saying, but not, or he's losing I don't even know. He's losing weight but not losing mass, I guess you're saying.
He's losing weight, but not
size.
Skinny.
He's not volume.
Skinny.
He's not losing
not
volume. So he's getting less dense. It should be called less dense.
yeah. And when he touches somebody, it's like they also lose weight. So like everything that he's carrying is also. I mean, there's some kind of silly rules. You know, it's like if I'm carrying, you know, whatever in my pockets, and I stand on the scale, like I can carry like a big, you know, whatever 50-pound dumbbell, and it's like it doesn't affect my weight. So I look the same, right? But he's resembling. So anyways, it's probably like maybe it could be like a you know, a package deal with Thinner.
Yeah, I guess so. It's like a sequel.
Yeah, but yeah, it was okay. It wasn't anything like really amazing, but it was fun. It's really, you know, short reads, like an hour or something.
Oh, it's just a novelette.
I think it's like 35,000 words. Let's see.
Oh, okay, almost a novella then.
40,000 words.
Gotcha. Okay, sure. That's novella length. Cool. Yeah, he has some great novellas. I think some of his bigger books were even published as a series of novellas, which, like, The Gunslinger was originally really short entries like that. Green Mile was a bunch of, like, novellas that were combined together. Things like that. So he does some interesting things with format. Thanks for the update, Nacho.
Sure.
Any other updates? What have you guys, Paul, Alien Boy, anything you guys have been reading lately? What have you liked and noticed or learned?
I recently been reading Native Boy.
What is that?
Native Boy.
That's a book, or what is it? A novel,
It's
or
a book.
what is that? It's a book. Okay, go ahead. What do you want to tell us about it?
So far I've been noticing the way characters speak. The way when the narrator is announcing when a character speaks, he doesn't need to constantly have it be this person said or this person said this. It's just like he expects the reader to like know who's talking and who's like he expects the reader to know who's talking.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's why I've been noticing.
We'll talk more about that next week. Yeah, we're going to do character and some dialogue stuff next week. But yeah, you don't always have to say, you don't always have to use what's called a dialogue tag and say, this person said this, they said this. There's other ways to indicate that just lend a smoother quality to the read. So that's a great thing to notice and pay attention to. And what name would you like us to call you in the bootcamp? You can change it yourself if you want to right click, or we can change it for you.
Yeah, change it for me, because I'm on my phone.
What should I change it to?
Earl.
Earl, okay. Thank you, Earl. Okie doke. Anyone else? Anyone else read something they want to tell us about? Anything you liked or noticed or learned? I've still been reading Those Across the River. I'm a little more than halfway through at this point, and I get the feeling things are about to get quite dicey for our main characters. I think somebody might end up getting eaten by monsters in this book. Just a feeling I get. So let's do some recaps from last week. And hopefully some folks are taking notes and paying a lot of attention and can tell us what were those key prose writing principles from last week. We had like 2 or 3 main things. What do you guys remember? It's okay if you don't have it perfectly the same as it was in the slideshow. Who was here last week that wants to take a guess?
I saw the video.
Oh.
Hold on, I wrote some notes.
Okay.
Use the active voice, concrete and specific language.
Yes, very good. Those are the main sort of ground level principles here. Did you want to say something, Amanda?
I forgot to take notes, and I was gonna re-look at the slides, but I forgot to, so I gotta download those.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, we'll recap it now. But yes, these are the main things. So we want to use active voice. We want to use concrete and specific language. And paragraphs. What's a paragraph, and how does it work? Marcus just watched the video recently. Maybe do you remember this part?
Yeah, this was a breakthrough for me. This was great. The paragraph is really expanding on the same idea, and each sentence is, going back to that same idea. That was a real breakthrough for me.
Exactly. Yeah. So a paragraph is an idea. A paragraph is a thought that is broken into sentences, each of which addresses and advances that thought or that idea. It's like you build a case for that thought. That doesn't mean we always have to say. You don't always have to directly state what the thought of the paragraph is. You can state it. But you should often be able to take that sentence that states the guiding idea out, and the audience will still get it, will still understand the point of why we just read that. Let's do some recap on just these essentials. I won't quiz you on all these parts of speech, but the main things to know: subject, verb, direct object. That's going to be kind of like your standard screenwriting type sentence. But there's another main kind of complement, which is predicate. That's referring back to or describing something we mentioned before. So that's like Jeremy is my teacher. The dog is smart. Those are both predicates. And sometimes there are multiple things. I mean, there's two types of predicates. There's what's called the predicate nominative, and then there's the adjectival predicate, I think it's called, which would be like the dog is smart. So it looks like an adjective, but it's actually being used as a predicate there. Beyond that, we have adjectives which describe nouns, adverbs which describe verbs, and we want to generally stay mostly away from adverbs, but there are times to use them, and just like don't lean on them too heavily sort of thing. Pronouns stand in place of nouns, he, she, they, it. Article is going to define the specificity of a noun. Conjunctions are going to join together sentences, clauses, verbs, or words together, and, but, or although, things like that. Prepositions will link nouns, pronouns, or phrases to other words within a sentence, like to, as, or beside. And interjections are going to be like when someone directly speaks out loud. Generally in prose, we want to replace long words with shorter and simpler ones, vary our sentence lengths, and don't forget the character voice that should be informing how we are... here, let me move out of the way. How you are writing about anything in the story world. Like, in a third-person, close perspective, we might be able to just describe a room, but it should sort of feel like it is tinged with the character of the person describing that room. Like, imagine the things that they would notice or the things that they would focus on. Simile and metaphor. This is what I didn't get to yesterday, or last time, so I just want to go over this and kind of round out most of the prose topics. So these are both figures of speech that draw resemblances between things. Similes are going to use like or as to directly create these comparisons. Life is like a box of chocolates. Whereas metaphor is not going to use like or as, and it's just going to directly state that something is something else in an effort to compare those things. So these are intended to evoke emotional response or to paint a particularly vivid picture for the reader. And other times, a metaphor might explain a phenomenon or might be a way of better understanding something or simplifying something or thinking of it in different terms. Given the amount of nuance that goes into it, a metaphor example in a text can sometimes deserve as much interpretation as the text itself, according to this blog, readsy.com. So that's kind of interesting. The fact that we chose something as our metaphor might be just as interesting as the metaphor itself in certain cases. Let's look at some examples of metaphors. Who wants to read some?
Sure.
Go ahead.
The sun in the west was a drop of burning gold that slid nearer and nearer the sill of the world.
It's from Lord of the Flies. Thank you for that. So very lyrical, poetic descriptions. We'll use a lot of these metaphors, right? You can use them in pretty much any context. You can just use them in describing an object or describing a scene or describing a person. They're very versatile.
And that was a metaphor because it didn't use the as. It just says that it is.
That's right. The sun was a drop of burning gold. Let's read the next one. Go ahead, Amanda.
Oh, okay. Her parents looked upon her as nothing more than a scab. A scab is something you have to put up with until the time comes when you can pick it off and flick it away. Matilda. I see the word as, so it kind of seems like a simile, although it was
this
sort
one,
of
yeah, you're right.
hidden
This one is kind of slightly blurs the line. The metaphor version, the direct metaphor version of this would be, to her parents, she was a scab.
Right.
But you can see how he goes through, just because, like, in some very nice, very whimsical types of writing like this, and Lemony Snicket, he will do this. They'll do this great thing where they will use a metaphor and then go on to explain it or clarify why they chose it, which I really like. And it's sort of like, we could have left it on its own. Go ahead.
Ooh, yeah, I mean, it really drills it home, right? Mm-hmm. Like, and you see, like, as a scab, like, there's a few different things. Scabs are painful. I mean, them going into it added more texture to the whole statement. So.
Right, exactly. We could also say, like, someone was a scab in the sense that they were, like, they could fix the situation temporarily, or they could, something like they had their uses. We could take different meanings from that same comparison, but the fact that we go on to explain it kind of amplifies it a bit because the explanation makes it clearer why he chose to use that.
Yeah.
Let's read the last one.
Yeah. Okay. Watch, delicately like the petals of a flower, like the first page, light the second page. Each becomes a black butterfly. Beautiful, eh? Light the third page from the second, and so on, chain smoking, chapter by chapter, all the silly things the words mean, all the false promises. So this had a simile in the beginning, and then metaphors as well.
That's right. Yep. We start with a simile, like the petals of a flower, and then we transition into metaphor. Each becomes a black butterfly, referring to the paper, the way it sort of crumples and blackens and twists into the air. Nice, right?
At first I thought I was reading fantasy because until I saw Fahrenheit 451, I was just reading, oh wow, the book pages are turning into butterflies.
Yeah, that can lead to trouble sometimes where it's not clear if you're using a metaphor or if you are actually...
In the context of that book, though, you're going to know what... But yeah.
Sure. But you're right. That is something worth noting, like using something like, he flew across the room, right? Well, that we might use that in a contemporary book to mean somebody just ran very quickly across the room. But in some stories, it might mean you literally flew across the room. So if there are going to be elements in your story that can be confused with metaphors that you're using, particularly in sci-fi and fantasy, and particularly at the beginning of the book when the reader is still forming their frame of suspension of disbelief and the things that are important in this world, you just have to be extra careful with the metaphors that you use. And the fun thing about writing metaphors and similes is that often these are going to be filtered so heavily through your character voice that this becomes a great tool for characterization. Can somebody explain what I mean or how that might be possible? How do you characterize via metaphors and similes?
The kinds of things that are going to come to the character.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm a kid, right, I'm probably not going to draw a comparison to Shakespeare. Mm-hmm. He talked like a Shakespearean author, right? He's going to maybe say something like, he talked like, Grover on Sesame Street. I mean, it's going to show the types of things they compare things to is going to show what they find important. Mm-hmm. It's going to express their age, the kinds of things they think about. I've never, that's a good question. Interesting tool to use.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we see this all the time. This is great stuff when you can pull this off. It could be in the texture and the language that you're using just to describe things around the character. Remember, in third person especially, you're choosing all your words for them in a limited perspective so that they feel as if we are evoking that character for the most part. So if it's like a little kid who is, I had an example for this, didn't I? If it's a kid, they're going to choose very different stuff than if somebody wasn't. So here's an example here. And let's also just look at this quote from Stephen King on writing. He mentions, when it's on target, a simile delights us much in the same way meeting an old friend in a crowd of strangers does. By comparing two seemingly unrelated objects, we are sometimes able to see an old thing in a new and vivid way. So this is a great way to think of how we are picking the similes and metaphors we're using and why. So think of the mood you can create or the characterization that can be accomplished when you're describing every detail in your setting. This is a very, this is a tool to teach us about your POV character. If your character says something like, he looked down at the nib of the ballpoint still pressed to the page, ink bloomed around it like blood from a corpse, what does that tell us is on that character's mind, right? Like, you wouldn't have picked that if the character was in a great mood and everything was going well, probably. You want to use this to tell us, oh, maybe that character has murdered someone and is guilty about it and is thinking about it. You can use this to say this person has a very dark outlook on life, or a very morbid personality, or maybe they work with corpses, or maybe they have PTSD, or something like that, right? You wouldn't pick that for just anybody.
That's a nice way to show and not tell, too, right? Rather than saying he was thinking about killing somebody, you know, he pushes his pen down till it bleeds like blood from a corpse. It's just like, yeah.
Exactly. And you can have characters use this in dialogue too. Things like this, like think of just in this. So this applies to stuff that is internal or is in their heads, but is also external. Think of, on House of the Dragon, they talk to the sea snake, the guy known as the sea snake. He is the lord of the ships. He's the best sailor ever. He's got all of the metaphors and similes that he uses are related to navigation and life at sea. So, he tells the king, hey, you should get married. Your time's running out. A strong sailor sails through the storm or away from it, but you can't just sit there and wait for it to hit you. All of his metaphors are like that. And sometimes characters will twist them around and sort of, use a sea metaphor to make a point against him in a very pointed way. But that character is always going to have ocean stuff on the mind. So that's going to tell us, how are they going to describe things and how are they going to compare things?
Well, that's a really good idea. And I've seen that, and sometimes they even joke about it in TV shows where another character will be we'll even call it out, not quite fourth wall, but that self-awareness where they're like, you're always using, math metaphors, I don't get that. Explain it in English,
Mm-hmm.
It's like when, you're solving the quantum physics, and they're like, what? But that's a great way to differentiate characters. Or just one way to practice when you're getting the words down, how do I find this character's voice? Mm-hmm. Well, make him describe how he's feeling with the metaphor that, whatever, if it's a water nymph or something, right? It's a water metaphor or,
mm-hmm.
Something like that. That's cool. That's super cool tool.
Yeah, that's lots of great stuff you can do there. Or just think of maybe even just the words the verbs that your character would pick, either in first person or in third person, to evoke some of those same sense of their opinion, their point of view on the world. If you have a character that's a really good chef and some people are making him food and they're not good at making it, the third person narration might say something like, they polluted the soup with peas, or they ruined the pasta with too much cheese. They defaced the dessert with too much chocolate syrup. You could just, those individual words that you choose might also tell us a great deal about how your POV character feels about something going on. Or I had another example in mind, but now I can't think of it. But hopefully you guys get the idea. I think in Sanderson's classes he mentions in some books, there's a series of books where the main character's from the desert, so he saw somebody. So every time he describes even a simple glass of water, it comes from this point of scarcity. The character describes how somebody foolishly and carelessly left a glass of water just out on the table, where anybody could spill it. And just the way that character thinks about the world comes through in the choices in comparison and the words that they're picking. So what makes a good simile or metaphor? They should be simple and clear, concise, useful, concise, and then memorable in that order according to dailywritingtips.com, which to me sounds suspiciously almost exactly like what we use here all the time, right? This is clarity, brevity, and voice in that order, which is the sort of one of these main principles that I'm using. Useful, concise, and then memorable. So the simile or metaphor should be clear, first of all. Stephen King mentions in his On Writing book that at one point he read in a work in progress that the man sat and waited with the patience of a man waiting for a turkey sandwich. And it's what does that even imply? What's the image that even is associated with that? Does somebody wait differently for a turkey sandwich than they wait for something else? I guess. But make sure it's clear before anything else. Then after that, we want brevity, so make sure you are reducing words and expressing that point as simply as possible. And finally, voice. We want to filter it through the character's voice and through your own voice and just make it look great on the page, basically. They should stir, but they should not be mixed. When you adopt a specific theme, stick with it. A mixed metaphor is a missed opportunity and a distraction rather than a delight. So I think we might all know kind of what this means. You know, don't mix your metaphors way too much. Don't include 5 metaphors in one line. You probably want to stick with one major metaphor per thought, which there might be a couple metaphors in a sentence, but they should be, if you're doing that, they should all be advancing and supporting the main idea of that sentence, and maybe sort of have a broader central metaphor there that you're getting at. Let's look at some similes. So this is going to involve like or as. Let's read a couple of these. Go ahead. If you're still down to read these, Amanda.
Sure. Okay. I can't see all of it.
Oh, whoops. My bad.
The water made a sound like kittens lapping.
Simple. Easy, right? Just tell us what it sounds like.
Yep, I can imagine.
Go ahead and read the next one.
Each one, when his time came, went mad and rushed into the woods to meet his death like a hare running down the throat of a python. That's pretty powerful. Like, that's like showing like clear death. Like, that adds a lot of clarity, because rushed into the woods to meet his death could be like, well, he just accidentally runs into the woods. But
yeah.
If it's like a hare running down the throat of a python, it's like you probably know you're going to death, and you have no, or something like that. It adds something there.
Yeah, it's sort of giving you your opinion. It's not just helping us picture the imagery, it's giving the speaker's opinion on the intent, or like in this case, he's sort of saying the foolishness, the foolhardiness of their actions. And this is Conan narrating this, so this is a character speaking. So Conan uses a lot of these sort of very simple metaphors, just really some basic imagery that it's going to, like, we might imagine these soldiers are not actually getting eaten by the enemy, but that is sort of the emotional feeling behind what's happening, which is why he uses that specific word choice. Let's read our last one.
To follow her thought was like following a voice which speaks too quickly to be taken down by one's pencil. That's an interesting metaphor in the sense that it's not that far, like thoughts versus writing. Like it's not very, it's almost like describing what it is.
The focus here it's really asking us to imagine there's sort of 2 metaphors here. I guess we would sort of point out the one that we're really the one that I would really focus on is the idea that your ability to keep up with someone is sort of being characterized as this pencil, or this writing, this sort of process of writing down everything somebody's saying. So trying to keep up with her is like trying to write down all of the thoughts that somebody is saying when they're speaking very quickly. Like, your own ability to process it will not be fast enough to keep up with that. I think that's sort of what this is. That's why this one's a little strange, because it says to follow her thought was like following a voice which speaks too loudly to be taken down by one's pencil. But really, it's sort of asking us to imagine our brain is the pencil, or our mental processing speed is the pencil here. Anyway, I hope that made sense. But this is sort of just different styles, different types of similes. Any questions on similes or metaphors, or what makes a good one? I have a couple more tips. Do you guys have any favorite similes or metaphors that you've read before?
You had some really nice ones in Fiendish Dogs, I seem to recall.
Oh, thank you. I don't remember any. Were there? Probably. That was a Western script, not a book. That's from a script I wrote last year. Anyone else? Any memories, any similes or metaphors that come to mind? Go ahead.
I wish I had been looking for them when I read Golden Compass, because I'll bet they're there. but I'll look for them and see.
Sure.
if
Yeah.
I find any
Maybe
for
note
next.
down a couple for next time. So here's some tips. More Stephen King. He suggests use fresh images with simple.
I found
Go ahead.
I found one. Oh
Okay.
my god. This is actually, so I love math. That's why I did that. But think of Adam and Eve like an imaginary number, like the square root of -1. You can never see any concrete proof that it exists. But if you include it in your equations, you can calculate all the manner of things that couldn't be imagined without it. That guy is just, I love this guy so much.
That's a good
I just
one.
love the
And
like that was
one's
really.
Go ahead.
I think. Yeah, I mean, the cool thing is when you find a metaphor for a concept that's like, he was getting very abstract and thought he was like leading edge of thought on some concepts, and so bringing in something like when you find that, it really helps people understand like a new concept that's maybe a little out there. So that was a cool one.
Yeah, similar metaphor is great for that.
First page I had marked that page with a little tab. I didn't realize it was a metaphor at the time. I just liked the wording of it. But anyways, thank you. Thanks for letting me read that.
Sure, yeah. And these are about inviting the comparison between two things that might simplify or clarify what your point is that you're making, or a complex concept can be broken down in simpler terms. So try using fresh images with simple vocabulary. In your writing, what does Raymond Chandler write? I lit a cigarette and it smelled like a plumber's handkerchief. I don't know what that actually smells like, but I can sort of imagine that it would be pretty bad. Or in the play Sleuth by Anthony Schaefer, a character describes something as having the taste of chilled Lysol. I've never tasted Lysol, that's a cleaning product. But and the fact that it's chilled.
Nice detail that it's chilled.
Yeah, it just makes it feel like you can taste it a little bit better. I don't know why. The fact is, yeah, like you can use metaphors that it's like, well, a person has never actually experienced that. They don't actually know what that's like. But it's all about just creating that feeling and, that visceral sense of experiencing that thing in this case. So yeah, metaphors and similes can be used for lots of different stuff. And they're some of your strongest tools in writing. Let's recap Tense and POV, and I want to ask, what Tense and POV are you guys writing in? I want to make sure everyone knows the choice they're making and why. So again, first person is I do or I did. You can have multiple first person POVs, but this gets confusing, so try not to have more than two probably. These are really common in YA, but in all genres have various forms of first person writing. Some consider this to be more natural ways to tell a story. Second person is saying you do this, you did that. Very experimental and literary books will do this sometimes, or we might see this in role-playing game or choose your own adventure style game writing or video game writing. Typically don't use this. Third person, also very common, that's he, she, does, or did. Very versatile. We have two styles. One is Omniscient, in which your narrator can kind of know everything and go anywhere and show us whatever they want at any point. This is very rare nowadays, and you should not pick that option unless you know exactly what you're doing. Limited is you're only accessing the thoughts and emotions of one central character at a time, often separated by chapter breaks. Sometimes just paragraph breaks if you're going to be flipping between a lot of different POVs in one chapter. It will confuse the audience quickly, so this head hopping, as it's called, is pretty rare to see nowadays. Usually, if you're going to be changing POVs, the modern convention is to break it to a new chapter. You can defy that if you want. You can take that as a challenge if you want, but that is what readers have really come to expect a lot of the time. If you have something way better than that, you can vary it or do something different. But this is the sort of guidelines, the rules. Maybe blame, George R.R. Martin for popularizing this very TV-ish, jumping from one central character to one central character sort of storytelling style. But this is the expectation. Questions on tense and POV? Okay, I want to go down the list and ask, what is the tense and POV you're going to use for your book and why? We'll start with Amanda.
I think it's going to be third person present.
Okay.
or past, actually. I don't know why would I do present. I think third person past.
Why would you do present?
Yeah.
Well, bunch of reasons. People find present to be more immediate, and it's very common in modern middle grade and YA. In fact, it's pretty much the norm.
Then maybe present. Okay, I don't think Frog Kisser's present. I kind of, I mean, that's something I could change, I guess, pretty easily. I mean, I could write the whole thing in past tense and change it to present.
You could, but you're leaning towards past. You're thinking more sort of like traditional fairy tale style feel to it, or do you want to have this give us a more modern YA feel to it?
I think present. Present
okay.
tense, third person. Not first person. I know that for sure.
Okay. And how many POV characters are you going to be featuring in your book? Do you have an idea of that?
One.
Just one. Okay, that's great. Yeah, younger books tend to skew towards less point of view characters. One point of view character is totally fine.
Yeah. I don't think. I mean, maybe if it becomes a series, then, But yeah, is anything going to be happening off screen, basically, like without her? Like, I don't think so. I don't think we're ever going to leave where she is. Right? Because if you leave where the character is, you're going to a different point of view, right?
Yeah, you have to be, unless...
Like, I'm trying to think, does Harry Potter leave where... I don't know if we ever leave Harry Potter.
No, Harry Potter is limited third person, and I believe it occasionally dips into Omniscient in a way that was more common in books in that era. She will, now and again, sort of step out of Harry's perspective and give us a little bit more about Hogwarts, or give us things that he couldn't really know, but, like, she just fiddles with the Omniscient point of view at times. That you can do that. I mean, like, generally you're not going to be flipping between Omniscient and limited. But then again, some styles tend to do that more, and head hopping was really common in, I was reading Diana Wynne Jones books, like, what's it called? She wrote Howl's Moving Castle, and what's the one I was reading? The Dark Lord of Dirkholm, and she head hops constantly in almost every paragraph. Any paragraph can be from any character's point of view. That sort of omniscient head hopping style used to be more common in 80s and 90s books, especially. Nowadays, it is not really the trend, and you'll have a lot of trouble getting a traditional agent or publishing writing in more head hopping styles.
I'm going traditional. I have no reason to try to do anything fancy or break any rules. So unless for some reason the head hopping just came natural, like unless that was just like the way that I thought, and not doing it was an impediment. But I mean, if I see this as just that kind of traditional, I guess it limited third person, right? So,
Great. Okay, thanks for that. Sounds like you thought it through. Let's keep going. Bithon? Is it Bithon? I'm not quite sure. Do you have a real name you'd like us to call you in the bootcamp?
What's up?
Do you have a real name that you'd like us to call you in the bootcamp? As we go through the bootcamp, we like to use real names, or you can use a nickname or a middle name or something if you really want to.
You can call me Dan or Daniel, I guess.
Okay.
But you cannot call me Danny. That is not okay.
Okay, understood. Thank you, Dan. Do you have you decided on a tense and point of view for your book?
I haven't.
Okay, are you leaning one way or the other? Go ahead.
I'm sorry, what?
Go ahead. I was going to say we can give you some tips or we can give you some suggestions if you want, or are you leaning one way or the other on this? Or do you have an idea of what you might want to do?
No, this is one of those weird situations where I've had a story bouncing around inside my head for years, and part of me is saying, this is not going to work in like the screenplay format that I've been growing used to. So I might as well just bite the bullet. And now that I'm here and now seeing others go through the same.
Okay, great. So I guess the question might be.
You cut out there.
Oh, can you hear me now? Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So the question you'll have to decide is first person, third person. Most people choose between those. So do you have a
Oh
lot
yeah,
of
third
characters?
person definitely.
Third person. Okay. And how many point of view characters do you think you want to have? You're writing fantasy, right?
Yeah, I'm writing fantasy. It's more like just more like a journey. So I guess I have like a couple of people in this adventuring crew.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. The part that I'm struggling with is, it sounds weird, but I haven't written yet, but I'm already saying I have to put hatchets to characters before I've even written, which is bizarre because I'm starting from the end and going like in all the wrong directions. Maybe I'm just hemming and hawing because I'm afraid to start. You ever get that?
Not myself, but I know many do struggle with this. This is something, I mean, over the next couple classes, we're going to get more into plotting, and maybe we can help you sort of start to narrow down what the story is going to be and what exactly is going to happen in it. For now, I guess we're just asking point of view and tense, so I think you know third person. And then you would just have to choose first person, or like present tense or past tense. Do you have an idea of what you might want to do there?
Definitely past.
Okay, well, great. You've chosen
Always
third
written
person.
in that style.
Okay, then third person past is totally fine. It sounds like if you're writing, especially if you're writing epic fantasy, the expectation is that you'll have more characters, so you can very easily jump around between characters in the third person past tense style. It feels very natural to do so. So that sounds like it'll work fine. Thank you for that. Let's check with Earl. What are you going to choose for your tense and voice of your book? And do you have any questions about that maybe that we can answer?
I was going to use third person, limited.
Okay. And remind us what it is that you were writing?
It was the teenage boy who goes to his grandparents' ramen restaurant, who works in his grandparents' ramen restaurant.
Oh, okay. That's right. I think you did mention this. This is sort of contemporary. Right. Okay. So yeah, third person, is that just going to have one main character then?
Yeah, this one main character that has the narration focus on him.
Okay, so just one point of view. Yep, third person would work for that. And I think if this... Wait, you didn't say this was based on a true story, did you? This is just made up, right?
Yeah, it's made up.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, for true stories, usually we do past tense just to imply this really did happen. If this is made up, it's up to you. You can do present tense, you can do past tense. People think, for the most part, that present tense will lend more of a sense of immediacy to what's going on, and it can be better for things like thrillers for that reason. Really makes you feel like you're in that character's shoes. But besides that, it becomes sort of invisible to the reader after a while, so present or past tense, it's up to you, and just pick whatever you think is going to work best for that book. Thanks, Earl. Let's check with Marcus.
Yes, so I'm going to be using first person present tense.
Okay.
And then I have a prologue and an epilogue, though, that are in third person. I don't know whose POV it's going to be from, but it's stuff that the main character can't know.
Yeah.
And so, and I'm using it. Oh, okay, there we go. Yeah. And I'm using it because, from what you just said, there's a sense of urgency there. It's also YA, first person. He's got a unique voice. So, yeah. And I tried third person, and I've already got feedback. Everyone loves his voice, so first person it is.
Yeah, first person is really good for sort of exhibiting a character's voice. If you have an interesting personality or something like that for them, then first person is a great way to show it off.
Cool.
Thanks, Marcus. Nacho, are you working on a book right now, or are you mostly still just rewriting the feature?
So yeah, I'm almost finished with the rewrite of the feature, and I'm ready to start a rewrite book that I wrote during NaNoWriMo, so it has a lot of problems. It's kind of like kind of going back to the outline stage. And I've really struggled with this. I mean, I did like first 10 pages, I went back and redid it, third person, first person, present tense, past tense, and tried to have a few people in my writers group like give me feedback, and I'm I'm still not 100%, but I guess I'm leaning toward. If I can sort of pull it off first person, I feel like it's easier to get the reader into it. Present tense, first person, but not 100% decided. And I'm not sure. It may even be something like I need to do another draft and go back and look at it. This is something I struggled with a lot to decide.
Okay, what do you prefer to read?
I like everything.
Everything. Okay. Well, that doesn't help.
So I have no. Yeah, I mean, I feel like if I can manage to pull off first person present tense, it will be more easier to draw people in, I think. But I'm not sure. And there are some other little issues, I think, where if you have, this is kind of like a more epic side of story where there'll be some chapters from other character point of view, and maybe past tense is easier for some certain kinds of.
You can do that.
Like, yeah.
So some would be in past tense, some would be in present. Yeah, you can use this for, like, we see this. Yeah. It's as a deliberate choice. It can lead to some interesting results. And for instance, also you might have like the same. What was it? We might have some characters that are in different timelines, or it might be the same person who they are telling one part of the story about their past, then one part of the story is taking place now, or something like that. You can mix it up. It just tends to be that readers usually prefer a book to be in the same tense throughout, but there's lots of reasons why you might change, or like there might be exceptions to that. There can also be what we call throwaway POVs. Have you guys seen these?
Yeah, I think I know what you're talking about.
Can you explain?
I think this would be when, like, most of the book is in the protagonist's point of view, but then we have like a chapter in the villain's point of view or something.
Yeah, exactly, something like that. Or it could be like, you'll see this in fantasy and superhero style books sometimes, or sometimes horror really has a lot of this kind of stuff, especially if you're reading like slashery kind of stories. It'll be like, your main character has their thing going on, then we'll cut to, the dark abandoned warehouse, and a security guard just happens to be walking through, and then we just follow the security guard for this one chapter until he stumbles across the giant monster, and then he gets eaten, and then we don't have any more chapters from that guard's point of view. Those are called throwaways. You can totally do that. It doesn't have to just be they die at the end of it. You can have throwaway in any genre. But just, it can be sometimes an unexpected, or it can be a nice break in the rhythm or in the action, or showing some other character that is seeing what's going on from a different light. Can be an interesting choice sometimes. So you can totally do throwaways if you'd like. Most books, in terms of POV, they're gonna have, like, it's really gonna vary a lot. Single character stories are often going to be things like thrillers, because we want to feel like we are the main character. We're really in their shoes. We're gonna feel like we're in the same danger that they are in. Horror also, really, it's nice if you have just one POV, because it allows us to immerse more in that one person's perspective and sort of establish a stronger rooting interest for just that one character to survive or succeed. Multiple POVs will tell broader and bigger stories. I'll have a whole slide on this in next class, but on POVs, the more characters, or the bigger story you have, usually the more characters you will need to experience it. Not always, though. You can have one character experience, a much longer, denser story if you want. But things like epic fantasy or epic historical are going to sometimes have huge casts of like 10, 15 main characters, which can get very difficult to maintain that ensemble. And we'll during our character week, which is next week, we will talk more about how to design around that. But if you're newer, just starting out writing books, limit your POVs. I say 2 or 3 POVs is like a hefty enough challenge that I wouldn't recommend straining beyond 3 POVs or so unless you really want to, or unless you need to for that genre or for that story to work. 1 POV is totally fine. Don't feel bad for choosing just one. It doesn't mean the book will be simpler or less, anything. It's perfectly okay to just limit your POVs quite a lot. Who else should we check with? Paul, what tense and voice are you leaning towards for the book that you're working on?
I'd like to work on one. I haven't had an idea yet. I know I'd like to work in a certain genre, but it's like apart from that, I don't really got a story.
Oh, okay, that's all right. We'll talk premise after this, and maybe we can give you some ideas. What genre do you want to do?
So I've been watching a lot of like science fiction stuff lately, but
Great.
like more specifically like Blade Runner, Cyberpunk, that kind of stuff. I really
cool.
dig the vibes.
Have you read Snow Crash?
Have I read what?
Snow Crash.
No, I haven't. Is it good?
Yep, it's pretty awesome. And it's like that early 90s cyberpunk, where it is sort of a parody of earlier cyberpunk in that it just turned a lot of the elements up to sort of 11 or 12. It's just like really over the top. I mean, the main character is a samurai who delivers pizza, but he's also a hacker, and so it's sort of a parody of cyberpunk, but it also just is an awesome cyberpunk story. And the voice is just fantastic, and tons of sort of info exposition dumps, very easy to read, but still kind of academic feeling style. So yeah, check it out. Snow Crash. That is by is that Neil Stephenson or is that William Gibson? Let me remind myself. That is by, come on, Neil Stephenson. That's right.
It's Neil Stephenson. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's right.
I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, if you're interested in cyberpunk, there's basically 2 or 3 books you should read. Or 2 or 3 works, I guess you should check out. One is Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep / Blade Runner, which you're aware of already. Second one is going to be Neuromancer by William Gibson, and third one is going to be Snow Crash by Neil Stephenson. That's the sort of holy trinity of cyberpunk.
All right.
So maybe reading those will give you some ideas, or maybe checking out some other stories like that. In the meantime, we'll give you some suggestions for premises, and maybe that can transition us into our section on premise. We need to start figuring out what your book is about and how to define it and how to explain it. The premise is the core concept of the story, and it should be relatable to the audience on the level that, you know, we're trying to appeal to as many people as possible usually. That doesn't mean that you need to write about just stuff that you think will appeal to the market. You should also write about things that you yourself know. And in terms of writing what you know, we've heard this a million times, and I like Stephen King's take on it here, where he says he likes to interpret this idea as broadly and inclusively as possible. Because, for instance, if you are a plumber, you know plumbing. But that's not all you know. That's not the extent of your knowledge. The heart knows things, as does the imagination, as he says. Book buyers aren't attracted to the literary merits of a novel as much as they are by a good story to take with them on the airplane, something that will fascinate them and pull them in and keep turning the pages. This happens when readers recognize the people in the book, their behaviors, their surroundings, and their talk. When the reader hears strong echoes of his or her own life or beliefs, he or she is apt to become more invested in the story, regardless of what package that sort of comes in. So we're trying to write characters that people relate to and root for and enjoy reading about, and you can use that knowledge of things that you are interested in or things that you know about to help inform what your characters get up to and what you write about. So be thinking, you know, if you all you can think of is I want to write a sort of action adventure story like Die Hard, and everything I come up with just feels like a ripoff of Die Hard, well, just think, what am I interested in? What can I add to that? If you're really into history, for example, you're like into aviation history, what if we did, I don't know, a Die Hard type story set on a blimp in World War II, right? And so then from there on, you can use a starting point, like something that you like as a starting point. Just say, I want to write something like that. But then use what you have knowledge of and things that you are an expert in, things that you have spent a lot of time on in terms of hobbies or your job or anything like that, and ask, what can I bring to that? How can I find a premise in that touches on something that I myself am interested in? So we're looking for compelling core concepts, core concepts that should be relatively immediately apparent, that can be quickly and concisely summarized in an engaging logline if we can, and book loglines more often will go to 2 sentences or sometimes occasionally even 3 sentences if there's a ton going on. I say try to stick to 2 sentences or less. We want to make sure you're not straying too far away from this core concept, and that you are exploring your premise to its full potential. So, let's finish out this plumber thing. If you're a plumber who enjoys sci-fi, you might consider a plumber aboard a starship or on an alien planet. And he asks, does that sound ludicrous? Well, there's a book called Cosmic Engineers, which is basically just that, and it's a great read. So there's a difference between lecturing about what you know and using what you know to enrich the story. The latter is good, the former is not. So, originality is a bit important. I mean, if we want people to actually buy this book and you're not writing this purely for practice, then originality will factor in, because people they gravitate towards things that are related to or linked to or feel like they are in the same world or arena of things they have seen before, but within that, they feel like they are distinct and they are not offering just the exact same meal that we've eaten 100 times. So we like to look at newer ideas, perspectives, or experiences. Unique hook, something we have not seen before, something that avoids cliches. I think original, trying to pick an idea that's perfectly original is less important than avoiding the cliches, right? You can write a story that feels like we've seen versions of that before, but still make it feel fun and fresh and different and interesting, and like it was worth our time. As long as we can avoid these cliches, because cliches are elements that used to have one function, but have been used for that function so often that they no longer have that function. Think of the scary clown, for instance. It's like, okay, some people might still find clowns scary sometimes, but the scary clown is a subversion of the happy, fun clown that has been subverted so many times since, again, Stephen King, since the 50s, that at this point it's a little less effective. It has sort of become a cliche, and it is no longer as subversive as it feels it once was. So that's what we mean by avoiding cliches. You can write something that's not totally original that still is in no way cliched. Let's look at our book premises, and I want to share loglines if we have working versions of them, or maybe we can start to help you form what you have into a logline. Who wants to go first? Volunteers to share what you have of your idea, and we can start making it into a logline.
I get your mind.
Go ahead.
Should I type it somewhere?
Yeah, in the chat.
Or just tell you what it is?
You can paste it in the chat, and you can read it out loud.
Which chat do you want us to use? The one on the left side?
Yeah, let's
maybe?
use the chat channel called Novel Bootcamp Chat. Here.
Okay, just type.
And do you have a title and genre or subgenre to tell us about?
Yeah, it's fantasy.
Okay.
Actually, I keep going back between him being 12 and 15, but I think I'm gonna make him 12 now. So it's like children's fantasy, I guess.
Okay, middle grade.
And what was the other question? A genre.
Genre. Anything else? The title?
Oh, the title is The Meek Saga.
The Meek Saga, M-E-E-K.
Yeah.
Okay. And loglines